Welcome once again to our AJA Lunchtime Live. I'm Kimberly Carroll. I'm the Animal Justice Academy Director, and our topic today is using social media to change the world for animals. And we have joining us the wonderful John Oberg. I want to welcome, first of all of you compassionate and determined beings here with us live, and welcome to those of you who are watching the replay. So folks, if you or your group has been posting to social media for a while and you're just hearing crickets, or maybe not crickets, but you're just not getting the likes and the followers that you need to really make an impact for animals online, John is going to get you on track today. So let me give you a little bit of official background on John. John Oberg is a social media influencer and an animal advocate dedicated to making the world a kinder place for animals by utilizing the power of social media. In late 2018, he became an independent animal advocate funded through individual donations, focusing on amplifying pro-animal content in the digital space. Previously, John served as Director of New Media for the Humane League and as Director of Communications for Vegan Outreach, two amazing organizations. In his decade of experience in social media advocacy, he's accumulated over 200,000 followers, not too shabby for an individual. His posts have been seen by hundreds of millions of people, and he has, or at least 100 of millions times, and that may be, some people that just love his stuff over and over again watching it. And he's heard directly from thousands of people who have been influenced by his work, of course. In alignment with his efforts to inspire other animals to improve their efforts for animals on social media, John has launched 3 online courses through the online education platform Advocacy Collaborative. And Kirsten will just put a link to those. Yeah, there we go. She's right ahead of me. And so that you can take a look, and we'll talk about those a little bit further into it. But John, I just want to officially welcome you. Hello, your debut in AJA.
Hey, Kimberly, I am very honored to be here. This is amazing. What a huge, awesome crowd. This is legitimate. I love it. And I live in Richmond, Virginia now, but I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. And so I've always considered myself like a quasi-Canadian. So to be with so many amazing Canadians, I love it.
Totally.
And everybody everywhere from all over the globe. This is great.
Sue Spar's asking, is John growing his metal mullet? Yes, he is. So John, you and I first met many years ago. We were on a panel together at the Toronto Vegetarian Food Fest. And then we bonded our relationship a couple of weeks ago at the AVA Summit, in which we sang in sync together at karaoke night. So I think that pretty well makes us, like blood brothers and sisters.
I'll take it. Yes, that was a real fun time. And if anybody has video, please don't share it.
Yeah, please don't. Our dancing queen version is already being shared around, so that'll do me.
Nice.
So John, we have so many questions for you today. I have a lot of questions. I'm going to be taking questions from our folks here, our community, and just for those of you who might be new, if you have a particular question you'd like to ask, just do *** Q and then your question, just so that I can differentiate between the questions and the comments. And I will take sort of questions throughout and most at the end. So John, tell us a little bit about being like a social media guru consultant. What exactly do you do with your days, and what do you do in the movement? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll talk more about how I came to focus on social media, but in the last decade or so, I've focused almost all of my animal advocacy in the social media space. And this is primarily because of the vast reach that we each can have as advocates. And I have really valued what Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and so many other social media platforms can do for animals, can do to raise awareness and inspire change. And that's why I've decided to focus so heavily on social media. And so I originally ran the social media for Vegan Outreach and then the Humane League, like you mentioned earlier in my bio. In the last 4 years, I've been doing this independently. And in my independent animal advocacy time, I have also consulted. So I'm a social media consultant where I will work with individuals or groups and organizations in the movement to talk about how they can amplify, how they can really do the most good that they can for animals on these platforms, and how they can really maximize the impact that they can have.
Mm. John, for those that don't know, John was a real grassroots activist for so many years, a lot of street activism, and best darn pamphleter south of our border, I have to say. And so, John, how did you get so immersed in social media? Why did you decide to put your amazing energy there?
Yeah, it's a good question, Kimberly. And yeah, so I went vegan in 2009. So I just recently had my 13-year vegan anniversary. And
Amazing,
uh,
congrats.
yeah, thank you. And shortly after going vegan, I decided to get involved with animal activism, because I realized right then, right from the beginning, that it's cool that I'm vegan, but if I can encourage other people to be vegan, I could exponentially create more impact for animals. And so I did what was available to me at the time in 2009, 2010, and so on. And that was to get involved locally in different forms of outreach. So I did a variety of things. I would do food giveaways, paid per views, demonstrations, protests, leafletting. I did a lot of leafletting, which would be going to college campuses or street corners, handing out pamphlets that talk about how animals are being treated in factory farms, encouraging them to try vegan eating and so on. And I really loved that. And I really loved leafletting, in fact. And so much so that I did it a lot. And then I got hired by Vegan Outreach to travel around North America. So I've actually been all over Canada handing out these leaflets. And I loved it. And I found it to be very, very effective. And any given day, I could reach hundreds or even thousands of people with this message of compassion for animals, a message that they otherwise wouldn't be thinking about on that particular day. And then what ended up happening was my mom, she got sick with cancer. And so I had to take a hiatus from traveling for Vegan Outreach. And so I took care of my mom full time. And this is in 2013, 2014. And of course, I couldn't travel anymore, but the opportunity presented itself to take over the social media for Vegan Outreach, which obviously I could do from home. And I kind of reluctantly said yes. I really wasn't that interested in doing it, but I was like, well, I can't travel because I'm taking care of my mom. But this is something I could do instead. And so I started running the social media for Vegan Outreach. And literally within days, I realized that I could make a bigger impact on social media in 1 week than I could in an entire lifetime of handing out leaflets. And this is sheer because of the sheer number of people who I could reach on a day-to-day basis through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. So that is when I decided to make my switch from grassroots street activism to activism in the digital space.
Amazing. Okay, so John, here you were, being the man on the street, and then you're thrust into this world of social media. So, how did you learn to navigate social media? Like, was it hard to learn? Were you natural at it? Did you take courses? How did you get up to speed?
So when I started doing social media full time about 10 years ago, I guess it maybe 8 or 9 years ago, what I did was essentially I looked at what everybody else in the movement was doing and what seemed to be working well and what seemed to not be working well. And I should preface this with the fact that my boss at the time, John Camp at Vegan Outreach, he offered me this position because he thought I had a pretty good social media presence on my personal pages. And so I guess it made sense based on that. So I had a little bit of experience doing social media.
So
But
you
I
didn't even
wasn't.
know it, but you were kind of auditioning for these roles through your own social media.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, Kimberly. I never really thought of it like that, but yeah, it ended up working out well. And I talked to other people who were doing social media full time and or even part time, and got their insights. And I really just spent some time really looking at the landscape at the time and how I could take the work that Vegan Outreach is doing and the work that I found to be valuable for animals and apply that to the social media space.
Okay, so can you share a little bit about from doing more of the grassroots activism and then translating that to social media? Like, were there any things in particular that you really took from that and transferred online?
Yeah, well, something that I've firmly believed in the 13 years that I've been doing vegan activism, whether it's on the streets or online, is that people care about animals. The vast majority of people care about animals, and they don't want animals to suffer. And of course, there's a very very small number of sociopaths out there who don't have empathy for animals, but the vast majority of people don't want to hurt animals. And so something I found is that when you illuminate the horrors going on behind the closed doors of factory farms and slaughterhouses, and you shine a light on this abuse, it will encourage people to change. And so I found this when I would travel from college to college and hand out leaflets and shock people. My goal wasn't to shock people, but my goal was to educate people about how animals are being treated. But people were just naturally shocked because what's happening to animals is quite shocking. And so I found so many times people would be like, wow, I had no clue this was happening. I want to make a difference. I want to go vegan. And then I found the exact same thing in the digital space because people are people. And so many, I know thousands of vegans at this point in my life, and so many of them went vegetarian or went vegan because of the education that was thrust upon them, whether they wanted it or not. And whether that was being handed a leaflet on a college campus or a street corner, or seeing a documentary, or seeing a post on Facebook, or seeing a tweet on Twitter. These are the things that really, really make a difference for people and really make a difference for animals in the long run.
Well, so John, so many of us gripe about social media. Oh, remember the world without social media. It seems so much simpler and less busy. But can you speak to how much social media has changed the game for our movement in particular?
Absolutely. And I should say this, that social media has its downsides. There are definitely negatives involved with social media and spending so much of our time on social media. And social media is not guilt free, but overall it has completely changed the game for animals, because never before in the history of humankind have we been able to reach everybody for free on anywhere across the globe. In an instant, a tweet of mine can be seen in Mongolia. A tweet of mine can be seen in South Africa. It can be seen anywhere. And we've never really had this amazingly democratized ability to spread information. And in terms of our advocacy, the one upside to how horrible animal agriculture is and how secretive it is that we have a lot of stuff to tell people. We have a lot of light to shine and illuminate the horrors that are going on behind these factory farms and slaughterhouses around the world.
And the democratization is just so huge. And I think we forget about that. I mean, it used to be that there was a handful of organizations that were speaking on behalf of the animals, and not necessarily in a way that a lot of advocates even liked. And so to be able to directly be able to have influence is huge. And especially when you build your platform. So
Absolutely.
John, how do you think the animal advocacy movement is actually doing in terms of social media? Like, what do you see as some of our greatest strengths and some of our greatest challenges?
Yeah, I would say the strengths are the fact that we have all these platforms in front of us, and it doesn't cost money to make a difference. Like, you talked about how my posts have been seen hundreds of millions of times on social media. Well, that was all organically. It's free. And I've done this through strategic use of the social media platforms, not through paying money for ads. And so the opportunity that presents itself in front of us is massive. And I think the movement has done a really good job at recognizing this and saying, I want to make a difference. I think where we come up short a little bit is that we really still do undervalue social media. And my theory is that we are all on social media so much that it's hard to see the strength of it when you're immersed in it every day. Which sounds kind of funny, but I think that we just use social media so much that we undervalue it. We don't see how valuable it really is. And I think that furthermore, the animal rights movement can still fall into some of the same tropes that we have for decades. And that is um, presenting our information in a way that doesn't really win the hearts and minds of others, particularly of non-vegans. What it does is it wins arguments or debates, but it doesn't necessarily move the needle. And I've found it to be so important to frame our message in a way that, of course, appeals to vegans to a certain extent, but really appeals to non-vegans. It's not just important to make meat eaters and non-vegans feel judged. It's not just important to make them feel like horrible. We want them to feel inspired to make a difference. So if I were to post a photo of a pig in a factory farm, for example, I wouldn't just say, you meat eaters are responsible for this, go to hell. What good is that going to do for me?
It would feel
What good is
good
that
a
going to
little
do
bit,
for
but it's
animals?
not going to do anything for the animals.
Exactly. This
Mhm.
isn't about our egos. This is about making a difference for animals. And so we can present this message, this picture of a pig on a factory farm, and say, this is what happens when we choose to eat, bacon, pork, ham, and so on. And fortunately, we live in a world where eating alternatives to this cruelty is very, very easy and inaccessible for most. And so this is something that we all should take more seriously. And so sometimes the message might be less sexy, but it's more effective for animals. And at the end, what matters the most for animals, it's the impact that we're making for them, not the impact we're having on our egos.
Hmm. Yeah, I always say, when in doubt, ask, what is going to help the animals the most. Because I love what you said, John, about we can win a debate on social media, but we have lost actual, people that are interested in the issue. We've lost engagement with those that are potential future vegans. So that's a beautiful thing for us to remember. So tell me a little bit about before we talk about how to do things right. What do you think it is that animal advocacy groups are getting wrong with social media? So that's kind of something that animal advocates are getting wrong. But any initial thoughts about what some groups are getting wrong?
I think that a lot of groups don't really see the value of social media. Obviously, you and me and many of the people here find there to be a lot of value, but social media often ends up being at the bottom of the priority list for organizations. Oftentimes, it will be like, oh, well, you know what? You do X, Y, and Z for the organization. You can also run the social media. It'll take you a few hours a week, and not enough resources get put into social media like there should be. And that's really tough because it's really tough to have a stellar social media presence, which every organization should strive to have, when you aren't putting enough resources into it. And so, for every animal advocacy group, you definitely should be putting resources into it because you can get so much out of it for your organization, but of course, for the animals as well. So, I would just love to see animal advocacy organizations really, really give social media the prioritization that it deserves.
Mm. And John, I have been hearing more and more from groups and individuals that social media just isn't delivering the results, like the actual, real sort of tangible results. What would you say to those? Like especially, it seems to be people think it's more so than ever. What would you say to that?
Well, social media, you can't expect success overnight. Social media success comes after a lot of time and resources being put into it. You can't just, create an account, post a video, and then think it's going to go viral. If that was the case, then all content would be going viral. But that's not possible. So it really takes a lot of resources. And whether you are an individual activist who has 3 hours a week to dedicate to social media, or whether you're a big animal rights organization who has a team of 3 people doing this 40 hours a week on social media, it really takes resources and time to put into really analyzing what's working on social media and what's not working, and really framing your efforts around that.
So it's really, we really have to think of it as the long game. It's like we're not necessarily going to have an instant convert, but over weeks, months of consistent, compelling content, that's where change is going to happen, and probably with numerous amounts of people.
Exactly. About 6 months or about 3 months ago or so, I hit 100,000 followers on Twitter, which I'm very excited about. But it took a lot of effort for like 6 years or so to get to that point. This wasn't something that happened as a result of one tweet going viral. It was hours, often per day, of work that I put into social media over a very, very long time. And so it's really important to realize that the effort that we put in really will lead to success, but you also have to be patient, because social success on social media or anywhere in reality is not a guarantee overnight.
So for those that are sitting here and they're like, oh, I only have a few hundred followers, or I haven't even started, or something like that. For those that are the individual animal advocates, can you give them a reason why they could and should be doing social media?
Yeah, definitely. So, I don't want these numbers I'm throwing around to dissuade anyone to think that you can only have success for animals if you have hundreds of thousands of followers. Because you can have success on social media if you have 12 followers. Okay. You can have a lot of success on social media no matter how many followers you have. And each one of us can amplify our impact, or really exponentially increase our impact. So whether you are reaching you can go from reaching 300 people in a year to 3,000 people a year, and that's huge. That is really, really huge. And we should remember that the vast majority of interactions that we see, or the vast majority of views of your social media posts, for example, are from people who are just observing. They aren't actually even engaging. And you are making a way bigger impact than you will ever actually know. What I like to think of it as the tip of the iceberg. You are only seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of the impact that you're making on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. And you are absolutely making a really, really big impact. So for many of you who have been impacted by something in your life, whether it's a documentary you saw or a social media post you saw, did you ever go and tell that person, oh yeah, that post you did, 7 years ago, that changed my life? Or did you ever reach out to the filmmaker of the film that made the documentary that made you go vegan and say, hey, that documentary you made me go vegan? Some of you maybe have, and most of you probably haven't. So it's important to remember that as advocates using social media, the vast majority of the impact that you're making, you will never even know about. Activism is a very thankless task, and hats off to all of you for really engaging and wanting to be the best you can. And yeah.
Yeah, John, I regularly have people who message me and say, "Oh, I went vegan a few months ago and I never got around to telling you it was because of your post." And I'm like, this is a person who never liked, commented, nothing. I had no idea they were seeing my stuff. So, yeah, so don't get too disheartened. All right, John, I want to get into some of the nuts and bolts now. So let's talk content. I'd like to know, for those of out there that are posting animal advocacy stuff and it's just not getting much, reaction. Can we talk about how folks can grow their followers, like of content that are doing well in social media? Give us a little rundown of maybe what the mix of social media is wise for us to try to keep in mind.
Cool. You cut out for about 4 seconds, but I think I got it, Kimberly.
Okay, okay, good.
My approach to social media is, as far as content goes, is having a variety of content. So I often see animal activists, one of the things that the habits that they get into is posting the same type of stuff all the time. And the downside to that is that people are eventually going to get bored of you. They're going to tune you out. And that's not what you want. You want people to be constantly engaged. And for that reason, I really recommend providing a variety of content. So not just the sad stuff, also throwing in the happy stuff, throwing in educational stuff, throwing in funny stuff, throwing in a variety of things. Talk about animal activism from your perspective. Talk about your relationships with animals. And there's so many different approaches that you can take. Definitely take a varied approach. Also, when
Mhm.
you think about content, maybe don't just post about animal stuff. Post about other things that you're interested in life outside of animal advocacy. Show that you are a three-dimensional individual who has other interests. Because if you are only an animal advocate posting about animal advocacy every single day, it's going to be really hard for you to connect with non-vegans. Because if you remember, non-vegans are not like us. Okay, they may love animals, but they're not thinking about animal advocacy every single day and stuff. But if they're seeing, your animal advocacy posts, boom, 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 every single day, they might get tired of that, and they might tune you out. They might mute you. They might unfollow you. They might unfriend you, and so on. So I really recommend talking about things that aren't about animals, because then people, when they do see your animal messaging, they are going to um, maybe take it more seriously. And then the last thing I'll say about content, real quick, is about how if you are talking about animal, first of all, I think the most important content that we can get out there is talking about the cruelty that animals face. And that is because, for one, I believe that that's the most effective way to harness change, to encourage people to actually change uh, their ways to help animals. But also, and there's just so much powerful content out there. That kind of content is often going to get a lot of engagement. And that way, when your posts get more comments, likes, shares, and so on, your post will be seen by more people. And that means more impact. And then on a on a even more detailed layer of thinking about animal advocacy content, particularly factory farming and the ways in which we abuse animals, I would recommend not going with the worst of the worst content. Because for one, your content may get censored, but for two, if it's so bad, people are just going to turn away without looking at it. They might look at it for 1 second and then turn away. And what the animals are facing is so bad, um, and there's so many layers of horror to it that you don't have to choose the worst layer. You might make more of an impact by choosing one of the lower layers. So, for example, just trying to get across the horrors of being confined in a space so small you can't spread your wings, or you can't turn around if you're a mother pig, or the horrors of being bred to grow so quickly that your legs break from beneath you and you suffer just being within your own body. These types of things you can really get out there without having any threat of censorship, without having any much threat of people just immediately turning away. So we can really reach people in these creative ways.
Mm, very, very good, precise info, John. Okay, I want to go back to talking a little bit about this variety. And what I'm hearing is basically you need to be a real person. You can't just be an info spitting machine. Like are looking on social media for people to emulate, to trust. In sales they say people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And I think it's the same with ideas. People take ideas and concepts from those they know, like, and trust. And so if you're just sort of putting just a whole line of informational cold sort of posts up, how do they know you? How do they certainly aren't going to like you, because you're like the grim reaper on social media, and they're not necessarily going to trust you. So John, when you talk about some of this other content, I think some animal advocates are afraid to be real and actually maybe fun and look at and include positive things, because there's so much suffering. So what do you do around that?
It's funny you mentioned the know, like, trust, because in one of my courses, I actually have a unit that is called, getting people to know you, like you, and trust you, which is so important. And that's kind of something that we kind of forget as animal advocates. We often think, put the information in front of them and they will do the rest. But in order to be a good conveyor of the message and a good way of, being able to win hearts and minds, I think it's pretty important to actually get people to know you, to like you, and to trust you. And and it's pretty funny thinking about how we're the Grim Reaper on social media. We I think I want to change my Twitter name to the Grim Reaper or something. Um,
Wow.
uh, but yeah, we, for me, the messaging that I get on social media, I try to walk this line where I'm appealing enough to vegans that they want to be interested in my content, supportive of the content, they want to share my content, but then also appealing to non-vegans so they don't feel judged and they don't feel like they are following the Grim Reaper on Twitter. And so it's you have to kind of find this balance between the two, which I think is really important. And just really, could talk all day about this subject. But in essence, we really want to do what we can to meet people where they are rather than where we want them to be, which can be a struggle at times because we look at the horrors animals are facing and we look at all, so many of our friends and family and the general public and how they are causing this cruelty. And it can just make us just go like, oh my God, like this is just driving me mad. But we really need to remember that everybody's on their own journey and we need to do our best to get them to go from one end of the spectrum towards the other end of the spectrum and to encourage them to do so. And I think that social media is a really great way to do that. And you really need to think about, the last thing I'll say about this is that it's really important to put yourself in your audience's shoes because you are not your audience, right? You are likely a vegan advocate who's been vegan for months, years, decades, maybe. And most of your audience is not. And they may be open to hearing your message, but they need to, hear it in a way that appeals to them. So it's really important to really put ourselves in our audience's shoes.
Mm, excellent. And I would add to that personality, right? Like people like personality. You all have personalities that are unique and delightful and or interesting. And John, do you find that that's something that people hold back on is bringing their own personality to stuff?
Yes, that's a really good point, Kimberly, and it's something I've really tried to do. So when I first started taking Twitter advocacy seriously, like 6-ish years ago, I was basically just an info machine, like you were talking about earlier. I was just pushing out content, and it often will perform well. But I realized over time that in order to really make more of an impact, I need to post content about myself. I need to get people to recognize that I'm a human being, and and this is beneficial for numerous ways, but most importantly, it's more beneficial to put a face and a name to the person pushing out this content because people can then relate to you more, and that's really really important because people are people and people are influenced by people, especially people who they know, like, and trust. And getting your personality out there is a really, really great way to do that. And so I will often, I try to post something about my personal life on Twitter, for example. And I mentioned Twitter a few times because that's the platform where I'm most active. I post about my personal life on Twitter. I try to at least once or twice every week or two. And I do so knowing that this type of content will get less engagement than, let's say, a photo of a mother pig in a gestation crate or a egg laying hen in a battery cage. But it's important for my overall approach to make that connection with others so that they are more open to hearing my other important messages.
I think probably a lot of folks here have the opposite. They'll put something very profound about animal rights and they'll be like nothing. And then they put a picture of their cat and it's just like 100, 200 likes, right? And so, yeah, so but it's important to have that mix. So John, everyone, so Matt is asking, what do you think is the best platform where we should spend the most time? So everybody's always asking, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, like, and some people say it's the one you like to be on that you should be on. Others say it's the one your audience is on. So what's your advice around platforms?
Good question. And I wish there was one easy answer to this question. If there was, though, we wouldn't be talking about social media for helping animals. We'd be talking about TikTok for helping animals, or Twitter, or whatever. It really depends on a variety of factors: the resources you have at hand, the platform or platforms that you are most comfortable with, but also what makes the most sense given your niche and given what you are interested in likely to post the most often. So if you are, if you're an entertainer, if you can post and you've got some video skills, okay, and TikTok would be really great for you. But if if you are someone who posts a lot of animal abuse content, that's like the thing that you're trying to focus a decent portion of your stuff on, then TikTok probably wouldn't be your place, because they have a really, really horrible censorship policy, which prevents you from posting a lot of stuff. So then you might want to focus on other platforms. I will say that my personal preference is platforms that have a share function, like Facebook and Twitter, where they can, on Facebook, it's called the share button. On Twitter, it's called the retweet button. And this can amplify your content. And so, I maybe only 1,000 of my followers might see a tweet, but let's say 100 of them retweet that tweet, then tens of thousands of people can see that tweet, and the vast majority of them aren't even my followers, which means that we are reaching the general public. And what's an ongoing theme of this conversation that we've had, Kimberly, is the importance of getting non-vegans to be open to our message and hearing our message and seeing our message.
Yeah, so John, that is a really important piece, because there's a couple of people asking. Malin said, I am also thinking about the social media algorithm. We usually get in our feed what we mostly watch. Most non-vegans don't go and watch information on slaughter industries. Just thinking about, how do you get people who usually don't watch your content to get information on animal rights? And Viral said, and how can we find a target market within social media to optimize our message for greater long-term results? For example, open-minded young folks who love animals is probably a better audience than closed-minded older folks who don't care about animals. So John, so one of the things you're saying loud and clear is, choose a platform with a share option, so that your information might have the chance of getting out to people beyond your own network. Any other pieces of advice for Malin and Viral?
Yeah, I mean, framing your message in a way that's appealing to as many people as possible, particularly walking this line where you're appealing to vegans, but also appealing to non-vegans. And, I could get a lot of likes, okay, and engagement in my tweets if I just took this like scorched earth approach, where I was just like, meat eaters are causing the end of the world. They're horrible scum who are doing, just horrible things, and I might get some likes and stuff, but that's not really going to appeal to non-vegans. So you need to walk this fine line, and if you do this, I mean, it's not even that fine of a line. It's a pretty wide line. So as long as you're not going too far, too extreme on either side, if you walk in this line, then you can actually really be more appealing overall.
Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, I guess folks are also asking, well, how do I improve my algorithms? How do I get my message in front of people outside of maybe my limited network? Any further ideas around that? I mean, first of all, we also have to remember there's always paid advertising. Even as an animal advocate, you can do a little bit of paid advertising, like $10 once a week to put a message that you really like forth a little bit more. But any other free ways to do this, John?
Yeah, and I am a firm believer that we as animal advocates can do a lot for free, and that's because animal issues are something that people really care about. Everyone cares about animals. We talked about that earlier. everybody loves animals. And so therefore, we can get this message to be seen by a lot of people, because people love animals. And if you think about the algorithm, for those who aren't super familiar with it, the algorithm is essentially this like mathematical formula that social media companies produce to determine whether or not, or to determine whose posts show up in the news feeds of others. 10 years ago, it was chronological. And so you post something, goes right to the top of all of your followers' news feeds. Those days are gone. So now it's you versus the algorithm. And given this algorithmic feature, we need to have content that's going to get as much engagement as possible. So you need to get likes, comments, and shares and views in order to get more likes, comments, shares, and views. It kind of builds on itself. So if it's content that people aren't interested in seeing, then it is less likely to perform well, which will not be good for that post, but also won't be good for future posts. And so you really need to think about how to frame your message in a way that's as appealing as possible to appeal to as many people as possible, but also to get as much engagement as possible. So think about the content, think about the caption, and put yourself in your audience's shoes. Would this appeal to me? Would I feel compelled to reply to this post or this tweet? Would I feel compelled to share this? And if the answer is no, then think about how you can frame this stuff in a way that's going to get more engagement, which will help you in the algorithm. And of course, I've created 3 online courses that describe how to create content and push content in a way that's going to be more likely for you to score well in the algorithm and have more people see your content. So obviously, this is a very shortened answer. There are many, many ways in which you could take your social media game to the next level and really perform well dealing with the algorithm.
Yeah, there's so much you don't want to, we don't want to scare people because you just kind of have to get out there and try. But for example, machine gun posting, like just one thing after another, that destroys your algorithms, right, John?
Yes. I really don't recommend just like, oh, I got this petition, let me post about it right away. And just doing this for everything. You really should try and get you really should just focus on like every single post individually, thinking about, is my audience going to engage with this? And if they aren't, then don't post it. It's just not worth it. It's better to post less often and higher quality than it is quantity.
Somebody was asking, what is the minimum frequency? This is B asking, what is the minimum frequency that you have to post in order to not lose engagement?
It's different for every platform. I would say just in general, I mean, you do want to be consistent. So I wouldn't recommend posting on any platform, 10 times this week, once next week, 100 times the following week. You want to have some consistency. And then you want to post this like right balance where you're not posting so infrequently that people forget who you are, but then not so frequently that you annoy people. And then they turn away, like you're talking about the machine gun posting. So you want to find this middle ground, which it's pretty big middle ground. So, don't worry too much. But for the minimum, I would recommend for Twitter, a couple of times a week. Actually, for pretty much all social media platforms, I would say at least once or twice a week would be the minimum you should aim for posting about animal advocacy or in an effort to amplify and exponentially increase your impact for animals using social media.
John, I'm going to just throw a bunch of quicker questions at you. Are you okay to give us a little extra time over the hour, or do you have to get going? Okay, because we have a lot of questions coming in, and I know that you're the best person to answer them. So John, what is the best, like people are always asking, what's the best time of day to post? And I know it must be different probably for different platforms, but do you have any rules of thumb?
Yeah, my rule of thumb is like mid-morning to early afternoon in the time zone where most of your followers are. So, I think many of your audience here are Canadian, so they're probably in like a what 3.5 hour, 4.5 hour time difference. So I would say, from like 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. would be the ideal if you're going to post once per day.
Mhm. Yeah, that's totally what I work with. Although I'm finding for the different groups I'm working with that evening like first early evening seems to be a really popular time too.
Yeah, I should preface this with like, again, there is no simple answer. I really wish that there was some things were just more hard and fast with social media. It would make teaching about social media a little bit easier. Sometimes there are lots of caveats to lots of rules with social media, and sometimes evening posting is good. What I would recommend doing is just posting, or doing a variety of strategies and seeing what seems to work best for you.
Mm. So, John, another thing that we talk a lot about posting, but we don't talk a lot about engaging. And I don't know if this is a common term, but I call it posting and ghosting. And so I can be guilty of that. I'm just like I got to get my stuff out there, and then I'm not getting on other people's stuff. I'm not active. Sometimes I'm trying to be better. So tell us a little bit about the importance of that.
I love it. I love posting and ghosting. That is genius. I may have to steal that from you.
Go for it.
And
Go for it.
I love it. And that is something that a lot of people are guilty of. And I am guilty of it from time to time. And in fact, I'm a big proponent of, this is sort of off topic, but I'm a big proponent and like not just, I'm a big proponent of sustainability, right? As an animal advocate. And it's the reason I've been doing this for 13 years is because I've prioritized sustainability. And for that reason, if I go on vacation for a week or something, I may have posts scheduled to go up then, but I'm not jumping on there all day, every day. In fact, I'm probably not jumping on, I will often not open the Twitter app for a week or two if I'm going on vacation. And that is posting and ghosting, but I do think that there are times for it. But in general, I highly recommend engaging on a regular basis. This is the whole other side of social media that is so incredibly important. And it's one of the reasons that I found a lot of success is because I've spent a lot of time building relationships and building engagement with my posts. And um, of course, posting good content with a good caption is really, really important. But then getting your message to be, to talk more in the comment section and replies about your post, about who you are. It really, really makes a really big impact. So I would highly recommend engaging with the comments that are rolling in, and liking those comments, replying to those comments, and keeping the conversation going. That's good for a variety of reasons. For one, it's kind of your way of thanking people. For two, it's encouraging them to come back. And for three, it's actually increasing the engagement of these posts, which is then going to push these posts into the news feeds of more people.
Yeah, like if you got a good conversation going on a post, it's going to start hitting more and more people's news feeds. That's why, when we post something and it maybe is sat for a day and then a good conversation starts, and then all of a sudden everybody's jumping on it because it's being put into people's news feeds. Um, and John, is it true that like for when you post, like you have a pretty small window usually of people liking, commenting, sharing for it to get picked up, usually?
Yeah, yes. So the way social media works, with algorithms, is essentially your post goes live, and within a few seconds, that post is put out into the news feeds of a certain percentage of your audience. And then if that post performs well with that small percentage of your audience, it will be seen by more people. But if it doesn't perform well, these platforms will basically just bury it. But even if it performs well or moderately, we really, of course, there's rare exceptions to this, like when posts go viral. But the vast majority of the time, posts will only really get engagement in the first hour or two after going up. And so the vast majority of the engagement you'll get on a certain post will be within the first few hours. And so that's something to keep in mind, which is why I think it's important to, um, you know, if you are going to post more than once in a day, at least give a few hours between those posts so you're not cannibalizing the other post's engagement.
Absolutely. And we're you were talking about people, getting the engagement on your own posts. Does it help your algorithms, do you think, to be posts or commenting on other people's stuff, John? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think posting on other people's stuff, I mean, it can be minorly beneficial in terms of getting your own post to be seen more by more people. But where I think it is good is that it's showing that you're an active member of the community. It's showing that, and then also people will see your comments and engagement, and then they go to your profile. And I think a really good strategy for good strategic commenting is actually to try to be one of the first comments on a really important or like a really big popular account. Try to be one of the first comments on posts and make it one that's going to get engagement. So say something that's appealing enough that will get engagement and interesting enough to separate you from other comments that'll be there. So oftentimes people will just do like simple emoji comments and stuff, which is fine. But if let's say you're following a big or let's say you follow a big animal advocacy account with like 100,000 followers on Instagram, and they just posted a picture of a dairy cow being taken away from its mother, like within hours of being born. Okay, instead of like just commenting a heartbreak or something, comment saying, what goes on behind the closed doors of dairy farms can be utterly cruel. It's, that's why I choose to be vegan, and I hope others will as well. I mean, that's just something I came up off the top of my head, and maybe you can come up with something more inspirational, but I would comment that real quick. And then other people will see that and like it and maybe reply to it. And then that just kind of snowballs and builds upon itself. And then that way, people will then see your name and they'll say, "Oh, John Oberg," or "Oh, Kimberly Carroll," whoever it is, and they'll go to your profile and then they'll see all cool vegan stuff you're posting. You're like, this seems like somebody who I'm interested in following, and then they might follow you as a result.
And John, what a brilliant way to be a sort of a renegade advocate going on non-vegan sites and doing a thoughtful, sort of provocative comment as one of the first ones on Joe Rogan or post or something like that, or closer to home, maybe some a lower hanging fruit like an environmental group where you can talk about animal agriculture. So yeah, I wonder, it'd be great to have a little alarm system set for, you could probably get notifications, right, for different accounts, and that could be a form of advocacy. As soon as they post, get on there, be the first comment, something really intelligent, very that leads them to some really powerful material, kind of thing.
I love that idea, Kimberly. And you can get notifications when certain accounts post, and so you could maybe every time Greenpeace tweets, for example, you could be the first one to reply to their tweet and say something. Obviously, when you're going to these non-vegan places, you have to frame your message in a way that's going to be effective for animals. And so, the comment that I used as an example isn't something I would say on a non-vegan one. I would probably tame it down a little bit, just a little bit, so that it's appealing to vegans, but also not so, overwhelmingly in your face for non-vegans.
Karen is asking, when you react to a post, are there particular emojis that push the post up in the algorithm, or does adding a comment help?
Comments are more effective than likes and reactions. I would recommend reacting. And if you're on Facebook, I would recommend doing like one of the other reactions besides the like. I think you're going to be weighted heavier in the algorithm, but comments are ideal. And if you are going to comment, I would recommend putting out a few words or even a sentence or two, rather than just like, the applause emoji or something. I think that there's more weight to it if you are putting in more of an effort.
Wow, interesting. B is asking, do comments make sense for an organization or just for an individual? Do you mean, does it make sense for the algorithms for an organization's post, B, or yeah, if you could explain that question a little bit more. And also just there is a hierarchy. Comments are amazing, but shares are even better to help boost a post, right? And saving a post isn't that the ultimate, John? When you save a post?
Yeah, I think sharing is probably the best. I think that if these platforms see like, wow, this let's say Kimberly posted something that people care so much about that they're willing to share it to their own audience, then this is a good thing, and that scores high. And so the more engagement overall you can get, the better. I don't know if you compare shares and saves. I don't know which one is more weighted. I could see an argument both ways, but they are definitely important. And it's worth noting that, of course, these are out of your control. You can't control how many people like, comment, share, save your post. But if you go back a little bit further, you can create content, push content, craft content and captions in a way that is most likely to get as much engagement as possible. And so it's really important for you to really consider everything you're posting as being as impactful as possible.
Mm. Just a tiny little last question on this piece, and then I have a question about hashtags. Fireweed asks, is it better to respond in the main body of the thread rather than under a comment, which tends to disappear one's contribution? I'm assuming that's on Facebook she's talking about. So,
I think if you want the most notoriety for your comment, just posting a general comment is better than replying to someone else's comment. However, I think a good strategy for Facebook and Instagram, especially, and even Twitter, is to reply to popular comments. So let's talk about that example I used earlier. Let's say you followed an animal advocacy account that posted about this dairy cow. Let's say you're 10 minutes late to the game. Okay, there's already some really popular comments that are getting a lot of traction. It might be too late for you to get your post or your comment to get that engagement. Well, it's not all for nothing, because you could actually reply to the maybe leading comment with a comment of your own that is going to get that is going to get a lot of engagement. So while you probably won't match the level of engagement that this original comment is getting, you can still get a lot of engagement on your own. So for example, if somebody said, let's say somebody used the same example that I said, you might reply to that saying, I agree. On October 19th, 2009, I went vegan, and for every day since, I've been so glad that I'm not contributing to the horrors that these poor calves experience. And that seems like a comment that people might want to engage with and like and comment and maybe even reply to themselves. And so these are kind of fun ways of just increasing the amount of engagement that you can get.
mhm. Just going back to B's question, it's like it doesn't make sense for an organization to comment because it expresses an individual and personalized opinion. It's still helpful, right, John?
Yeah, yeah. So pretty much everything I said in this hour-long conversation is applicable to both individuals and to groups and organizations. And I do think that it's really nice when I see organizations and companies talk, comment things like, I think a lot of organizations, we talked earlier about what are organizations not doing well. Well, I think a lot of organizations are doing a little bit too much posting and ghosting, as you might say, Kimberly. And
Mhm.
I think that that's something where I think groups can really make a big difference. And when I used to run the social media for the Humane League, that was something that I spent a lot of time on, because I felt like that was something that kind of separated us from a lot of other organizations. I would spend a lot of time, and I would have teams of volunteers spend time as well, basically engaging with the comment section and replying to comments as the Humane League, because I felt like this was something that kind of put us in a different different bubble, and
Mhm.
really helped amplify our message.
Mm. John, a couple of people are asking about hashtags. Matt asked, can you touch on hashtags for effective activism, building your following? And also, sorry, I just lost him. Yes, sorry, her. Alexa said, can you talk about hashtags on Insta? Best way to use them.
Yeah, so once upon a time, you just say throw as many hashtags as you can in with your post, and those days are gone. So if you think about with Instagram, and hashtags are still a thing, but you actually want to use fewer. If you use too many, it's essentially it doesn't work. Instagram basically saw people abusing the system, and they said, you can post as many hashtags as you want, but it doesn't mean that we're going to actually show you in the their search results for the hashtag. And so what I would recommend doing is using a handful of hashtags, maybe 2 to 7. And I would try to do as many, I would implement them within the caption of a post. And then I would also, but I wouldn't do so many that it's annoying to look at, because you do so many hashtags, it's just weird because they show up as blue. And if you have like every other word is blue, it just doesn't flow well and people don't read it as much. And it's kind of defeating the purpose. So what I like to do is I like to use maybe 3, 4, 5 hashtags in a 3 to 5 sentence caption, and try to incorporate them into the sentences rather than just a word vomit of hashtags at the end of the caption. And this is fairly true with other platforms as well. One thing I would like to stress is that word vomits of hashtags at the end of captions, any platform, just look kind of messy. And I would recommend not really doing that too often unless it's something that's really important. So, for example, I recently did some tweeting about trying to get Aldi to commit to phasing out gestation crates. And so the hashtag for that campaign is hashtag crate free Aldi. And so at the end of my tweet, I use hashtag crate free Aldi, which makes sense. But as much as you can within the sentences of your caption, incorporate hashtags.
Got it. And for those folks that were talking about how do I get in front of other audiences, the hashtags is one of those things, right? You can have a hashtag that could, put you in the line of the feed of a hashtag that other people could come across your post. Is that right, John?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways in which you can get your content in front of the eyes of other people, and hashtags is one way. Of course, also getting your content to be shared, so important. So Facebook, Twitter, especially, I love that because you can easily share your posts, or people can share your posts. And for that reason, excuse me, I want to mention that everybody here, unless you have a really good reason, I highly recommend having a public account on Twitter and on Instagram. For your Facebook posts, I would recommend making them public. Unless it's something very personal, I really recommend this, because if you are only reaching people inside your bubble, you can only do so much good. But the general public needs to hear our message. They need to see the horrors that are happening to animals, and so it's for that reason I would really recommend having a public account. And that way, when people are sharing and retweeting you and stuff, many people can see your posts, not just the people who have already opted into seeing your posts.
And that is something that's come up in a couple of questions, John, is like, can I do this without relinquishing my privacy? And probably not very well. Like, I mean, you don't have to you let people know intimate details about you, but you have to let them in a little bit. And if not, then maybe social media just isn't your form of advocacy. Maybe that's just not, and that's fine. Social media does not have to be your form of advocacy as an animal activist.
Right, good point. And I think if you do want to do social media well and get the most out of it, I really would recommend that you have public accounts. And for that reason, and yeah, I do want to mention that social media isn't the only form of advocacy out there, of course. We talked earlier about leaf letting. I still think leaf letting is great. I think that social media is much more impactful, especially for my advocacy. But I think that there's lots of really great forms of advocacy, and maybe social media isn't your thing. if you aren't comfortable getting people to see your stuff. And I will really quickly say that no matter if you have a public or private account, I highly recommend using a public or a profile photo that is actually a photo of you, not a photo of an animal, not a photo of a letter. Like it's actually a photo of you and actually your actual name. Because if it isn't this, then it's going to be a much harder for people to make that connection with you and to
Know,
care
like,
about
and
what you have to
trust.
say.
The know, like,
Exactly.
and trust factor, right?
Yep.
In one little thing, a profile photo can make such a difference. John,
Yep.
that's worth
Absolutely.
the price of admission. I mean, the price of admission is free, but still. Okay, John, I want to ask you about your courses, but one more question, because I think this is something a lot of people are struggling over, and that is video, because we are hearing that video is king right now. And that, really, unless you're doing like short, snappy videos, you're not getting picked up. So what if doing videos just seems like too much for folks, too much work or too anxiety inducing? Any words of guidance there?
Yeah, videos are really, really important for amplifying your message and, and amplifying pro animal content. So I would do as much as you can to get that out there, but you can still do a lot of creative things without video. There's lots of great photos out there, photos you can use. If you're a wordsmith, you can put together some really good, interesting and intriguing captions that are just text only. There's links you could post. You can post polls, and there's lots of things that you can do that aren't video. But I would try to encourage you all to use video as much as possible. And actually, on that note, I want to give a shout out to my friend Sue Spar, who is here. She's a good friend of mine in Toronto, and she is actually so she interviewed me a number of years ago on the Calling All Vegans show, which was so fun. It was in front of a live studio audience, which is the only interview I've ever done in front of a live audience like this. It was so fun, and she's trying to bring the studio back, like with like as an animal rights center, and she started a GoFundMe recently with this. So if you are interested in supporting it, that great work there in Toronto, I highly recommend looking up Sue Spar's GoFundMe for the animal rights center there. But on that note, yeah, I do think that, from that interview, for example, I got lots of really great video because they recorded it, and I've tweeted about this video many, many times. And so I really recommend getting as much video out there as possible.
And we love Sue. Sue's a good friend of mine too, and the project she's working on is really exciting. Kirsten's going to see if she can pull that GoFundMe link as well. So, John, last but not least, you have been so kind to speak so quickly and try to answer so many questions, and I know we have only hit the tip of the iceberg. John's got an amazing resource for folks that want to dive deeper into this. John, tell us about your courses.
Absolutely. So in the last year and a half, I have partnered with Advocacy Collaborative to create 3 online courses that were designed for animal advocates who want to use social media to maximize the good that they can do for animals. And so in these courses, I teach people how to get more followers, how to get more likes, comments, and engagement on their posts, and really how to make more of an impact for animals. And so I have 3 courses. One is one is for mastering Twitter to change the world. One is for Instagram. And then the third one is a general social media course. And so, yeah, so I want to, mention that if you wanted to sign up or enroll, you could do so at advocacycollab.com. And you can also just, it's the pinned post on all of my social media platforms if you want to investigate further. Would love for your students here to enroll and check those courses out.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kirsten, put the link just to see all of your courses there. And yeah, I mean, just tell us a little bit about them. So they're just like recorded video and people can watch them at their own pace? Is that how it works?
Exactly. So they're self-guided. And so once you enroll, you have 6 whole months to take the course, and they're all self-guided. And so you can go at your own pace, and you also have access to monthly office hours with me should you have questions and things you want to talk about with social media. And then within these courses or within the units, you have quizzes and lots of interactive materials that will really help you learn how to master social media to make a bigger impact for animals.
Excellent, John. Well, it's obviously this is such an area of interest. We had up to 80 folks here live with us on Zoom, a whole bunch more over on the live stream. And for those of you who are watching the replay, I hope you check it out. So let's go back to our community here. And John, well, first of all, folks, before we say thank you to John, I just want to remind you our next Lunchtime Live is November 24th. I know that's Thanksgiving in the US, but if you can't stand your family, join us. All us Canadians and a few folks outside of the US will be here. If you're not already on the email list to get those notices, make sure you sign up for free at animaljusticeacademy.com. Lots of thank yous coming in, John. There is, Susie said, John has impacted me a lot on my journey, so thank you so much. Thank you, John, for all the important work you do for animals. Wonderful. Everybody's loving you, John. How can they not? AGAers, can we give a big AGA thank you to John for being here with us? Yes. John, thank you. And I hope we will be able to come and have you come in again soon. Maybe we'll go even narrower with something and get some more, soak up some more of your wisdom.
I would love that. Thank you again for having me, Kimberly. Thank you for coordinating here, Kirsten. And thank you all for spending an hour and a half out of your day to hear more about helping more animals. You all rock, and I'm honored to be connected with all of you. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for coming and your wonderful comments, questions, and for being part of this community. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.